Senator Rafferty, we are live.
Thank you very much, and good morning, folks, and welcome to this morning's work sessions. You are listening or watching the Committee on Education and Cultural Affairs. We're here today to do some work sessions on two bills, LD 1838 and LD 1845. When we complete those work sessions, we also have some reports coming in from tied to the department. In any case, my name is Joe Rafferty. I am the Senate Chair, and I work out representing Senate District 34 down in York County. Before I get going, just a reminder, it is a work session, and I know that we've had all of us have had some communication issues in recent days, and today we continue in some respects. Hopefully everything will go smoothly, but keep in mind, if you do transition in, or you coming into the meeting from an observer to potentially speaking or addressing an issue for us, there will be a slight delay in your travels in terms of doing that, but you will get here. So that said, also just kind of a rule of thumb for me is that we keep in mind that we've all been invited into one another's home, and please be respectful as guests in that capacity. I would like to give the committee an opportunity to introduce themselves. I'll start with my co-chair, Representative Brennan.
Thank you, Senator Rafferty, and good morning to members of the committee. My name is Michael Brennan. I represent District 36, which is part of Portland.
Thank you. Senator Woodson.
Dave Woodson, District 33 and York County.
Thank you. Representative Crockett.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Ed Crockett, District 43, which is part of Portland and part of Falmouth.
Thank you. Representative Lyman.
Good morning, Sheila Lyman, District 74, J, Livermore Falls, and part of Livermore. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative McCray.
Yes, good morning, folks. This is David McCray from my home in Fort Fairfield up in the center part of Worcester County. Cold up here as everywhere. When I get up this morning, no internet at all, but right now it's kind of sketchy. And I've got a couple of other meetings that I have committees to attend to, so I may be in and out. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Millette.
Good morning, I'm Rebecca Millette. I represent House District 30, which is most of Cape Elizabeth, and I as well have some matters in front of other committees this morning, and so maybe in and out.
Thank you. Representative Salisbury.
Good morning, I'm Sue Salisbury, and I represent, House District 35, which is part of Westbrook.
Thank you. Representative Sampson.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Heidi Sampson, representing the good people of House District 21. That's Alfred, Limerick, Shapley, Newfield, and Parsonsfield.
Thank you. Representative Stearns.
Good morning. My name's Paul Stearns. I represent House District 119 in Piscataquis County. And I'm sitting in Guilford, Maine, and my honeybees are threatening mutiny this morning.
Senator Daughtry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everybody. It seems to be a theme of the day, but I will be in and out because unfortunately my pipes froze, and I figured I'll be listening and going back and forth with a heat gun. So wish me luck. I also, on top of doing home repairs, represent the Senate District 24 of Harpswell, Brunswick, Freeport, North Yarmouth, and Pownell. If anyone has any tips, please let me know.
Wow. Just good luck, Senator. That is a tough way to start the day for sure. Representative Dodge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning. I apologize for my tardiness. My name is Jan Dodge. I represent House District 97, Belfast, Northport, and Waldo. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you. And folks, our committee couldn't function without some great help. And our committee clerk, Eli Murphy, and our analysts we'll hear a lot from as we get into our work session, and that would be Hillary Rizla. So thank you both for being here and all that you're doing for us each and every day. So that said, I will, our first bill this morning, piece of legislature is LD 1838, and that specifically reads, an act to improve student access to post-secondary school transcripts and diplomas. I will, at this time, give the floor to our analyst, Hillary Risler. Thank you, Hillary.
Sure. So the committee may recall that we worked this bill last week. This is the bill that would prohibit post-secondary institutions in the state, both public and private, from withholding transcripts or diplomas. The committee had voted to table this bill to get a little bit more information as well. You might recall that there was a lot of discussion about Washington State and some of what their law was. And so the committee had been tabling this just to get a little bit more information and to review some of that. I believe Senator Vitelli was going to be here this morning and may have some more information for the committee as well, although I don't know if I see her yet in the attendee list. Representative Brennan, I know you spoke with her as well. Do you want me to sort of start going through? Oh, or I see a hand up.
Yeah, if I know when I spoke with her last night, she intended to be here this morning, and in her absence, I think you should start.
There's a hand up of it. Is Senator Vitelli maybe under the name Daniel Hu? Eli, yep, if we could let Daniel Hu in, I think that's actually Senator Vitelli.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, Senator, thank you very much.
Oh, good.
Sorry for any confusion on our end.
No, I think it's maybe a confusion on our end. Daniel is our administrative assistant and is new in this job as well. So we're all learning some ropes here.
We're going to give you the floor.
All right. Well, thank you. I believe, Hillary, the committee should have the draft amended version to look at.
I didn't actually have it out to the committee. I wasn't sure if we were final on it, but let me send it right now.
Okay. Well, as that's coming your way, I'll just give you the background. After the last time I was with this committee, and let me just start by saying good morning, everybody, and I hope you're all as warm as can be on this very chilly morning. So I've had some conversations with the university and the community colleges about how a proposal would work on their end. And I believe what is now in the amended version of the bill includes some items that they have agreed to work with us on. So a couple major pieces that I'll just mention. One is we landed on a sort of a threshold of total debt amount of $2,500 for four-year college students and $500 for two-year college students, which would encompass obviously the community colleges, and use that as a sort of point at which different things would happen. So if a student owes less than $2,500 or $500 at a community college, two-year college, the institution would be required to release their documents, transcripts, and diploma unconditionally upon request. If the debt that the student owed the institution was above those amounts, then the student would have to agree to go into a repayment plan. The university acknowledged, and I think this is true with the community college as well, is that they were going to need to come up with processes that would be then consistent across all of their institutions to move forward in that regard. So the student and the university would have to agree on a repayment plan And upon agreeing to do that, the institution would then release the documents. In addition, we agreed that the institutions would report back to this committee on certain outcomes, if you will, of this policy being put in place. And those are listed in the draft amendment, but they include the number of, let me see if I can, the number of transcripts and diplomas released, disaggregated by those who owed a debt of greater than 500 or less than 500 or 2,500 as the other cutoff point. The number of accounts that were now in repayment plan and the amounts and the status of those accounts. And to the extent known, demographic information of the students who requested these documents, in part so that we can all learn what the true impact of this policy is on those who are least able to afford not having these documents. We also, I think you'll see this amendment keeps the conditions that were in the Washington language that we looked at, this committee members looked at last time, which is the reasons why somebody might request these documents. And the reason for keeping that in as a sort of a check off, in other words, the student would let the institution know I'm asking for these documents because A, I'm applying for a job, or B, I'm going on to graduate school, whatever those reasons are. That would give the institution some information with which they can better serve their student and better understand how the repayment plan is going to operate with them. We also, in terms of the repayment plan, also included an appeals process, and this was something that we discussed with the university as well, that they do this already. And so we felt that would be another tool that the universities can use to make sure that they're engaging in these conversations and that they can get to a point where they are in agreement and have a good likelihood that the student and the university will come to terms and that the debt will be in fact repaid, because that's ultimately the goal, certainly for the universities. But in the meantime, we want to make sure that the student gets access to these documents. So that's sort of where I think we came to as an agreement. It's a little bit of a blending of what the committee had talked about and what we heard from our public institutions and what we learned from the Washington State legislation. I think that covers it. I may have forgotten something. So happy to answer any questions or to talk further, but that gives you an outline. And Hillary, I'm sure, can do a better job of walking you through the document because she put it all together for me.
No, thank you. That was a good summary. I do have a couple of questions. Representative Brennan and Senator Woodson.
Thank you, Senator Rafferty. This is just a comment. Thank you for the amendment, Senator. I think there was also some agreement about that the university and community college would develop a uniform policy across the system. So it was not one campus applying the policy in one way and another campus applying it in another way. So there would be uniformity across the systems.
Yes, thank you. That was very much their point. They realized they needed to be more consistent in how this was handled. So yes, I think that would be to all of our benefits to have them do that.
Right. Right.
Thank you. Senator Woodson and Representative Dodge, then Representative Salisbury.
Thank you. Good morning, Senator Vitale. Now, was this the private colleges also involved in this discussion?
Excuse me, I missed the question.
The private colleges, Bowdoin, Colby, et cetera, Bates, were they involved in this decision?
I've not had conversations with them, Senator. This would apply to them as well. However.
Okay. Yeah, I would think it'd be important to hear from them. Also, if the owed amount is over the threshold of 2,500 or 500, they enter into a repayment agreement. What happens if it's not over the threshold? How is that money going to be collected? Are these individuals held responsible?
Yes, thank you, Senator. Clearly, the intent here is not to forgive these debts, but I would just remind the committee members that the university already has a small debt forgiveness program in which the 2,500 is also used as a cutoff. If somebody reapplies to their institution and they owe the institution $2,500 or less, that debt gets forgiven by the university as they re-enroll. So it basically, the universities or the institution beyond our public universities have the same options to pursue debt collection that they currently have, no matter what the amount is. But it seemed that using that as a figure fit with what they were already working on in terms of how to serve their students who may still owe them money. I don't know if does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Hillary?
Thank you. I just wanted to mention for Senator Woodsum that Dan Walker, who represents the Maine Independent Colleges Association, is here for the work session.
Thank you.
Representative Dodge and then Representative Salisbury. I think you're muted.
Thank you. I hope that corrected the issue. Thank you, Senator Vitelli, for being here today. My question is around the mention that was made of the Student Borrower Protection Institute during testimony. And is it safe to assume that these amendments are in agreement with what they stand for and advocate for in their institution? Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for the question, Representative. I think probably you should best address that directly to them, but in my conversations with them, they would argue, I believe, that there should be no conditions for release of these documents. My position is we do what we can do. And this proposal seemed to be something that is supported by our public institutions. It sort of fits with the existing practice. And I think it advances the cause for our students who need these documents in order to move on with their careers. So that's my answer. You'll have to ask them directly what their reaction is.
Thank you. Representative Salisbury.
Thanks so much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Vitelli, for this amendment. I'm really appreciative of this work and this compromise that's come up that sort of balances the needs for this bill and the needs of the university. I was just looking through here. You had mentioned, sorry, my screen froze right as I was getting ready to ask you the question, and now I can't move the document. So I'm going to leave it at that until I find to make sure it's not right here in front of me, and I'll get back to you.
That would be helpful at any point for me to pull it up on my screen. Just let me know.
It's coming back to life now. Thank you.
Representative Stearns.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The one component of the discussion that we've had that I can support would be universal policies across all campuses. And that is as far as I can go. I'm concerned that one of the pieces of education goes beyond just the classroom, and the notion that someone would get the idea that they are not responsible for a debt that they incurred is is going to, in my opinion, cause ramifications for that individual for the rest of their life. Based on the testimony of the institutions that we heard from, I believe that they already take extraordinary measures to work with each and every individual student, and I don't feel this piece of legislation is necessary. However, I'll reiterate that I do believe that the policy, it would be great to have the policies be uniform across all campuses so that everybody's treated that way.
Thank you. Representative Crockett.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to follow up. I don't know whether Eli or Hillary could bring Mr. Walker in. I would love to get his thoughts on the amendment with respect to the private institutions.
Thank you. Eli, is Mr. Walker in the audience?
As he's bringing him in, I did send the draft that I just sent to this committee to Mr. Walker, Becky Smith, and Sam Warren all at the same time. They would have just received it, so they probably don't have a chance to have reviewed it that much in depth yet, but he did get a copy.
Thank you. And I don't know, Mr. Walker, if you were able to, if you were in transition and could hear what the question was or not. So
I don't think I heard the specific question from Representative Crockett.
it was more of an overview.
Okay.
Representative?
Yeah, Mr. Walker, I was just curious. Senator Woodson brought up the fact where the private institutions involved in bringing this amendment here, and Senator Vitelli said she didn't believe so. So I wanted to reach out to you. Granted, if you haven't had a chance to review it, we can give you a few minutes certainly to do that. But I was very curious how the private institutions felt about this compromise.
All right. Thank you, Representative Crockett. Thank you, Senator Woodson, for reaching out momentarily, a moment ago. Again, I'll just introduce myself. I'm Dan Walker. I'm with Preddy Flaherty, and we represent the Maine Independent Colleges Association, which is made up of our 11 nonprofit private colleges and universities in the state. We've been monitoring the situation. I've been bringing it to the college's attention. We were not part of the discussions with Senator Vitelli. The university system has been keeping us apprised of what's been going on there. So I'm aware of the discussions. Yes, this is the first time we've seen the amendment, but I think it's the first time everyone's seen the amendment. So let me just say a couple things. While for the independent colleges, the bad debt situation is not out of control. We have no doubt that it will increase significantly if schools cannot use these tools, like withholding a transcript or otherwise. However, let me just use St. Joseph's College as an example. They gave us permission. Currently, they have 161 students with outstanding debt with a total balance of $1.1 million. That would be in this category. And that includes 122 undergraduate students on campus, 23 students, online students, and 16 graduate students. So a fairly good balance. Currently, they work with these students and release transcripts for two reasons, really. Even if they're in debt, and that would be directly to a potential employer, but not to the students. And also, if needed for jobs or scholarships, regardless of the balance. So that's the way some schools do. I know you're looking for some potential uniformity within systems. I have 11 different schools which have 11 different systems, but that's what St. Joe's does. Now, if this will raise costs to institutions, the amendment is much better than the bill, but it'll still raise costs. The the publics have as a backstop the state, ultimately, not you know, it's ultimately there. The independent schools don't have that backstop. Now, one of the I think one of the questions would be like, what happens to the $2,500 and below? Well, in this case, it would probably be sent to collections more quickly, because I think they do, you know, use that. So I think that would be one outcome of that. But we just want to raise another idea. I know this is a little late to the game. We've been observing what's been going on, and I don't know if this will, where this will go, but this would be allowing access to records and transcripts for semesters where students had a zero balance. So, for example, you've got a student's in their junior fall, and she finds herself unable to pay some debt within that fall semester. But up to that point, they had a clear balance for each semester, which allowed that student to re-enroll and continue her studies. It would be reasonable to allow her access to her records, transcripts for those first 2 years, you know, unimpeded. And the only for the semester where there was an issue would this be impacted. That's something that folks came up with just recently when pushed. And you know, we'd be happy to talk with Senator Vitelli some more. It sounds like there's been significant advances made on this bill and discussions with the publics. So I'll leave it at that. So those are our initial comments on it.
Thank you. I have a hand up from Representative Salisbury.
Thanks so much. And I found the other question that I had, which was answered, which in Senator Vitelli's amendment, which was talking about under which circumstances that they would request a copy of their transcript, the job or military, things like that. So I appreciate that. In talking the numbers that you just gave, Mr. Walker, I'm wondering if there's ever been a discussion, this is sort of a broad question, amongst universities in a situation where instead of letting a student get to a debt that's going to preclude them from getting their transcript or moving on basically with their lives, if there's been a discussion of stopping taking of classes. Do you know what I mean? So now you owe us whatever the amount is, $2,000, $5,000, whatever it is. You cannot take classes until you do that, instead of getting into this position where you have for St. Joe's $1.1 million owed by 61 students. Do you know what I mean? Like, that seems like we're setting up this situation. I know that doesn't
161 students, but still, yeah.
A bit better, but I wonder.
Well, sir, if I could, I think that is the case. I think they do have it, you know, when someone is in debt, I don't know if I think there is a discussion that goes on before they're allowed to re-enroll for the next semester. If that's the question.
I had that discussion with my daughter. Frankly, she owed $7,000. You know, I mean, that's not, certainly there's a lot of people in Maine that owe way more than that, but you know what I mean? Like, I feel like some of this we're perpetuating, we're keeping this going. You know, you move on to your graduate and stuff like that. We're perpetuating this problem that, anyway, that's a bigger discussion for another day. I understand that, but I just want to throw that out there. I feel like this is a good sort of a balancing act between the needs of the universities and the needs of students, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Senator Daughtry's hand is up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Walker. I'm still in a sync, so I'm going to keep my video off, but I was wondering, you sort of mentioned how that if this were to go through, this would raise costs for your institution. So I'm wondering, I mean, one of the things, and this is not just with the independent colleges, it's also, you know, with the universities as a whole, the publics and the privates, there's still a method to go after the debt. So I'm wondering, is it just that, you know, will it cost the institutions more to be able to go through a traditional debt collection? But yeah, just wondering if you could speak a little bit about how it would raise costs.
I think, and I'd have to go back and get more specifics. That was a more general comment that I think that I heard. So I think currently they do use, I think they do use collections as well. I believe. And I just think that in implementing some of, just adding these layers of requirements will simply just add time and to what they already have to go through and what to work with students. I guess I have a quick question about the repayment plan option. The amendment says if a student is, and this would go to this question, if a student is required to agree to a repayment plan under the section, the post-secondary educational institution shall. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out the how a repayment plan is, because I think that's a good idea, setting students up with a repayment plan. And I think that's often the way it's done, but how is that incorporated into this bill?
Senator Vitelli, do you want to address that? Or Hillary, you have your hand up. Thank you.
I'm happy to help address it since I was the one who was quickly drafting it. And if it needs to be language cleaned up a little bit, that does not surprise me. But I think the intent from Senator Vitelli here is that if that student owes more than that threshold amount, they would be required to sign off on a payment plan. The last sentence there about requiring a student to agree to the payment plan, the post-secondary institution shall. This was about the requirement to provide the student the right to appeal the terms of that repayment plan, as well as collect that additional information regarding the reason for the request. And then that final requirement that they could not require the payment, an actual payment on the repayment plan prior to releasing the transcript. So I think that's how those pieces are tying in to the requirement for the repayment plan.
Okay.
I'm sure Senator Vitelli can correct me if I got any of that wrong.
No, thank you, Hillary. I'll just add, partly this is there because what I heard from the institutions is that they want to have a dialogue with their students. They want to have the opportunity to talk to them about how they're going to repay this debt. That's what they're looking to do. I think what I heard is that they don't want to have to go to collection. So we were trying to structure this as a way to encourage that dialogue between the institution and the student who owed the debt. But I think it's important to note that, and I have to double check the language here, Hillary, is that they agree to have the repayment plan, and that's what triggers the release of the documents. I think it's a simple matter of signing an affidavit or to attest that, yes, I am going to work with the university to repay this debt. And that transaction is what triggers the release of the documents. Because if we waited until the repayment plan was sort of signed and sealed, if you will, the appeals process could take some time. And meanwhile, they may have lost the job opportunity because their employer was waiting for that transcript. So that's what the intent is here. But I did want to make it clear that this is a tool that the institutions basically ask for, as a way to have a conversation, a dialogue with their students, that's how they're going to get the money paid back most effectively.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Hillary, your hand is up, and then Senator Woodson.
Nope, I just forgot to lower it.
Okay, Senator Woodson.
Okay. I thought Senator Vitelli clarified my question, but at the end she didn't. So do I understand that this is a question for Hillary and the senator? So a student owes over $2,500. They have a dialogue with the college and they agree to a payment system. But the student, the transcript has to be released before the student agrees to a repayment plan. Is that basically what I'm hearing here?
No.
I think as drafted, the student would have to agree to the repayment plan prior to the release of the transcript, but they would not necessarily have to make an actual payment on that repayment plan prior to the release of the transcript.
Okay, so when would the payment be required?
The amendment as drafted does not address that. So I would defer to Senator Vitelli.
Well,
I would think they would. There has to be some responsibility here. You know, I mean, the college is giving a major concession to an individual who owes them money, and people sign agreements all the time, but they don't necessarily follow up on them. How is the college guaranteed that this payment is going to be made once the transcript is released? That's the question.
Thank you, Senator. I don't know if I should defer to Representative Brennan, who has his hand up.
Thank you. Representative Brennan?
Thank you, Senator Rafferty. In response to your question, Senator Woodson, the plan would be mutually agreed upon. So it would be an agreement reached between the university, the college, the institution, and the student. So if in fact the student at some point did not follow that payment plan, the university would utilize its current collection process or the current methods that they use to collect on any debt. This is simply a process that would assure the university that the student is committed and does have a part of a repayment plan, and allow them to access their transcript or diploma before they have paid off the entirety of their debt. So the university and community colleges were comfortable with this because, as Senator Vitelli pointed out, it allowed them to engage with the student to come up with a mutually agreed upon plan. But in fact, it didn't take away any of the tools or any of the methods that the university or community college use now to collect the on a debt that is over a period of time.
Thank you. Senator Woodson, did you have an additional question or follow up there?
Well, not really. I just feel that, I mean, the student, when they agreed to the tuition, room and board, books, et cetera, when they entered the college in good faith, I mean, nothing changes. All we're doing is creating a loophole for people who, for one reason or another, are not paying their bills. So I just don't agree with the whole thing.
Any additional questions? I guess the only, yes, Representative Brennan.
This is more of a comment, but to Senator Woodson's point, he's absolutely right. It does create a loophole, and that's the intent of the bill. And I wouldn't describe it as a loophole. It provides a mechanism for students to access their transcripts while at the same time holding them accountable for the debt that they may owe that institution. So that's why I think I commend Senator Vitelli for bringing forward the amendment, because I think it addresses the issues that were identified at the public hearing by both the community college and the university system, and strikes that balance between providing access and accountability and responsibility at the same time. So that was I'm sorry, that was less of a question and more of a comment.
Thank you. Senator Woodson?
No, this is a comment too, but I mean, many bills that we do pass have these long-term consequences. And the universities, the education costs are continually going up, and we certainly want kids going to further their careers and stuff. But I don't feel we should be making it more difficult for business, educational institutions to survive. And I also feel we need to set standards and examples for the individuals to take responsibility, whether it's financial responsibility or whatever. And that's where I stand. So thank you.
Thank you. Senator Vitale, then Representative McCray.
I have to unmute, sorry. I forgot about that. I guess I want to just reiterate and acknowledge what Senator Woodson is saying, is that this is actually intended to help that process of taking responsibility on the part of students. I've spent many years in my earlier career actually developing and teaching financial management classes and helping people gain the confidence and the ability to manage their finances and to understand what they owe and how that plays out into their ability to have a secure future for themselves financially. I think what this is doing is creating a pathway for people to get their credentials so that they can continue down a path of building their assets, if you will, which education can be considered one, so that they can take responsibility for their actions, for their debts, for what they owe. And I truly think that this is a way for us to help people and institutions come together on these issues. I also just want to point out that there is a reporting requirement in the language, and that's intended so that we, the policymakers that we are, can learn from this effort to see whether we are in fact making a difference. And so that's, we don't maybe know all the answers right now, but the report that's required and is built into this is going to help us learn what in fact the impact of this is on both the students and the institutions. So, I really just want to make sure that part is recognized going forward as you consider the rest of this bill.
Thank you. Representative McCray.
Thank you, Senator. I support the bill. We are in work session, so comments are in order, I believe. Anyway, I hear Senator Woodson, and I really do understand that point of view. When a student incurs a debt, it's sort of like a long ways away before I got to worry about really honoring my commitment. And when the time comes, when the rubber hits the road, and it's like, okay, I guess I've got this debt. I think that this bill provides a vehicle for them to say, okay, now I got to get serious because I have something immediate that I want to proceed with my future, with my career, with my path. And to sit down with the university or the college and develop a plan, a succinct plan, I think is helpful, certainly to the university. And I would think in most cases, helpful to the student to take responsibility for a loan that they incurred, that they really, the repayment was so far away that they thought it'll never come. And now it's there. So I very much like the way this bill has evolved, the amendment, while being sensitive to the commitment that people made when they incurred the debt. So I support the bill because I think it's a good loophole. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative, I'm sorry, Senator Woodson, you have a question?
No, I keep forgetting to lower my hand. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Any other questions at this time? I guess I have one myself. I'll ask in a moment, but looking, and I work with high school kids a ton, and I think a lot of I know that until I needed a transcript, there were times when I didn't, I wasn't really paying attention or aware that I still owed whatever fee, whatever. So hopefully this process does bring that to the attention to the student, and it does give the school a second means, in my opinion, to say, we know that you owe this money and you might turn it over to collection. But this is a face-to-face conversation that says, you still owe us money and let's sit down and create the payment plan. I guess one question I would have, maybe to Hillary, Senator Vitelli, or potentially Mr. Walker, is there any evidence that you became aware of or revealed that the current system, I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of outstanding monies out there. How much leverage does the actual transcript, does that, how much money in return to the college is the request for transcripts or the release of transcripts actually recovering? Representative Salisbury.
Well, I think one of the things we found in our first meeting was that they don't separate those funds that are received. So they can't say we have outstanding debt for tuition or we have outstanding debt for room and board. So this bill is really helpful because it will require that reporting. That's one of the, I think another good fortunes of this bill is we'll be able to see. And maybe that'll translate into being able to show that by using this new process, we are able to recover this much in tuition. And I think that's how.
Thank you. Any other, yes, Hillary.
I just wanted to let you know that Samantha Warren from the UMaine system does have her hand up in the attendee list if you want to hear from her.
Okay, well, if you could, Eli, we'll, in the meantime, I'm going to go to Representative Crockett as she's transitioning.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was actually looking in the attending list to see if Ryan Lowe was there, because I thought he would have been a great one to maybe answer your question. But I will say this before we go to Sam. The amendment makes this bill so much more palatable for me. I think it's fair because it gave the public school system, in this case, an opportunity to come up with a fair compromise, as opposed to holding all debt. Much of it, in my opinion, in my personal experience, was more frivolous. It had nothing to do with tuition and room and board in my daughter's case. So I really applaud the efforts to bring this amendment forward. And it feels to me like a very good compromise to deal with all the different levels and types of debt that the universities are dealing with.
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Warren.
Good morning, Senator Rafferty and Representative Brennan. I just wanted the committee to be aware that the University of Maine system and the community college system were in the waiting room and had answers to a number of the questions that were raised. And so I know my counterpart, Becky Smith, as well as Pam Ramirez-Morin are in the room. And so I just wanted to make you aware because a number of things have been said that is hard for us to kind of let be put out there in the ether and go unanswered. So if I may, I just wanted to quickly address a couple of things that were raised. to give some context to this conversation, we really appreciate Senator Vitelli working with us to come up with this amendment. It's far from perfect. It's a much higher number than the university initially felt comfortable with. I can tell you that. But we were committed to compromise because I think we realize that all of you and certainly us want the same outcomes, which is success for our students and their ability to progress in their college and career. There was a question raised, I think, by Representative Salisbury about why we let students incur these high balances in the first place. And I just want to clarify, and I'm sure Becky can speak to the community college, but within the University of Maine system, we have historically had a policy that if you have a balance, it historically was actually $100. If you had more than $100 past due, you were not allowed to enroll in the next semester because we didn't want to facilitate, kind of enable our students to go into greater debt. During the pandemic, we raised that level to $1,000 with recognition of the financial difficulties families were facing, but also that a college education was more important than ever. And so that was not reached lightly. There were a lot of conversations, including with our student representatives to the Board of Trustees as we thought about those policies. But that is currently the practice. And I also wanted to clarify that these outstanding balances are not student loans. So there was a comment made about how these are bills that the students aren't expecting to pay for many years down the road. That's actually not true. These balances are, your tuition and fees and room and board from last semester that you haven't yet paid. There may be balances older than that, but these are not obligations that a student made, to pay off years down the road. They are kind of current balances. Now the student may have left the institution, and so the balance gets older and older, but it is not a loan. That is completely outside of this particular process. So I don't know if that's helpful context and makes you, Representative Salisbury, feel a little bit better. Now, if you're currently, if you've paid all your balance for kind of the fall semester and you enroll in the spring semester, and so your tuition and fees and room and board and everything are, $5,000 or whatever. Now you owe us $5,000, and so that's where students get. So I'm not sure if that's helpful context, but I did think it was important for you to know. And in looking at the university's data, it appears that under this policy change, more than half of the students with outstanding balances, more than probably around 6,000 students would be automatically eligible to get their transcript without paying that balance under the $2,500 threshold. And with that, I'll stop unless there are further questions.
Representative Salisbury has her hand up. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Sam, for answering that. And I think that I got a little carried away in talking about like the bigger picture of, students are allowed to take on debt, which transfers to loans. Certainly there's the debt that's owed to, like what you just mentioned, owing current debt to the university, but then they may have also taken on a lot of debt, which obviously the university has no control over. That's completely outside of it, but it's sort of a bigger, broader picture for the country to talk about the students that are taking on all these debts that have no idea where they're going to. But thank you for that clarification and that information.
We couldn't agree more. Under federal policy, we have to let a student know of the maximum loans amount that they can take out, even if we know that they don't need to borrow that full amount. So that is something that if you talk to our financial aid officers, and I see Pam shaking her head, is a great source of frustration for our institutions too, is because sometimes students do take on more debt than is absolutely necessary because they do have access to the ability to do so. And I think to Representative McCrae's point, those student loans seem like something far off in the future. And if every time they turn on the TV and hear that those loans may be forgiven altogether, it's certainly not an incentive for them to not take out the maximum amount they're allowed.
Thanks very much for that clarification. Ms. Smith, I see that you're in the audience. Were there some lingering questions that you wanted to address?
No, I think Sam did a nice job of talking about the university. Community college operates very similarly. I just say that about we didn't do a particular analysis of the $500 threshold because our processes are different at each college, and it's a manual process for our financial aid and business officers to do some of this work. But about 74% of the accounts that have holds for us have a balance of less than $1,000. So we are talking about the majority of our accounts in this bill. We operate under the same federal guidelines that the university system does as well. Pam Ramirez-Morin is on as well. She's our CFO. So Pam, if you want to add something, please do. Also, when I was looking at the reporting section of the bill, we can gather the information that this bill calls for. That means most likely every person that requests a transcript from us will have a form that they will need to fill out that we'll have to create in one of our systems. So that means there's no more calling up the community college and saying, hey, can I have my transcript? Even if you don't have a hold, we'll have to be collecting a bunch of that information. So just as you're thinking about the burdens on our especially for us, where we have colleges with like the one person office, that is something that we will do and we can do, but it will probably add more of a burden onto our students and our overly stressed staff. And I just feel like I need to say that part out loud.
Thank you. And Ms. Ramirez-Morin, did you have a comment? Do you wanted to add anything?
I just wanted to provide a little bit of clarity, if I could, on how these holds come about and how the debt's incurred. I know there's a little bit of frustration with the fact that we can't split it between room and board and the tuition and fees. And at least for the community college system, what happens is when the student applies and then the financial aid is applied to their account, down the road, if they leave, we are required to send that financial aid back because they haven't earned it all. So if a student leaves in October, to use a really broad analysis, I guess it's, they may have $1,000 in tuition and fees, but they received $4,000 in financial aid to cover their cost of attendance, room and board, whatever it is. They leave in October, we may have to return $2,500 of that, depending on what that calculation comes out to. So their debt is going to be $2,500 to us, not the $1,000 that they started with for tuition and fees. I hope that makes sense. And that's where the majority of we had 99.5% of our holds that were attributed to tuition, what we call tuition and fees, which may also include room and board.
So I need a clarification. So I take out a loan for $4,000 for semester one. I leave before Thanksgiving, hypothetically. And so I've only technically spent half of that money. The money that goes back to the source is still being billed to the student?
The amount will be returned to the federal government. There's what they call an R2T4, so it's a return of Title IV that has to be performed when we learn that when the college learns that they have a student that is no longer attending. So, and that amount is what ends up being the debt on the student's account for which the hold is placed. So it's not directly the tuition and fees, because they may have received, in the example that I gave you, if they had $1,000 balance for their tuition and fees, but they had a $4,000 federal financial aid, either Pell or grants, that was placed on their account, we're going to then disperse $3,000 to the student so that they can pay for the other costs of attendance, their transportation, their course materials, anything additional that they have. So they've received that $3,000. They've paid their balance, then they leave and we end up having to send the federal funds back to the federal government because they haven't earned them all.
Thank you. Any additional questions, folks? Did I leave anyone out from the system that was looking to comment? I'm sorry. I struggle looking at my screen and try to figure out who's in the hands are raised outside my vision here. Yes, Representative Brennan.
Thank you, Senator Rafferty. And just to move the discussion along, I would like to make a motion at this point.
Sure.
And I would move ought to pass on LD 1838 as amended, and the amendment being what was provided to us today by our OPLA staff.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I heard Representative Brennan's motion, and I believe I heard the voice of Mr. Representative McCray offering a second. Is that correct? Okay. And Hillary, your hand is up.
Thank you. One component that was not included in the draft that I did on behalf of Senator Vitelli, but both Senator Vitelli and Representative Brennan brought up, is the addition of the uniform policy across the University of Maine system and the Maine Community College system. So I just want to clarify that the intent of the amendment is to include that as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional discussions before I'm going to actually call the roll so I don't leave anyone out? People have been coming and going. So in order to, it'll help Eli get our votes registered. So Eli, so the motion is, folks, just to be clear, ought to pass as amended. It's been made, it's been seconded. Prior to the vote, Eli has his hand up. Yes, sir.
Just a reminder for the committee, for these virtual votes, we do need to be able to be seen and heard for the roll call vote.
Thank you. When we get to our Senator Pipes, we'll see what she can do. Otherwise, folks will have to register their vote at it later. Okay. Hillary, did you have another comment? Okay. Eli, if you would, please. So if you would call the roll, sir.
Absolutely. Senator Rafferty.
Yes, ought to pass as amended.
Senator Daughtry. Senator Woodson.
Oh, wait.
Oh,
sorry. Wasn't fast enough. Yes.
Senator Woodson.
No.
Representative Brennan.
Yes.
Representative Crockett.
Although imperfect, it feels like a fair compromise. Yes.
Representative Dodge.
Yay.
Representative Lyman.
No.
Representative McCray.
Yes.
Representative Millette. Representative Roach.
No.
Representative Salisbury.
Yes.
Representative Sampson.
No.
Representative Stearns.
No.
The vote as stands is 7 votes yes, 5 votes no.
And Representative Millette I'll let her know. You might send a reminder as well, Eli, that she can register her vote at a later date. I'm sorry, Representative Stearns.
I just wanted to mention the minority report is ought not to pass.
Thank you, sir.
Senator, I just want to thank the committee for your consideration and appreciate all of your questions and thoughtfulness in looking at this important issue on behalf of our students and our higher ed institutions. So thank you.
And thank you for bringing it forward. I think it's going to, good luck with it moving forward. And I think we've, I know there's a lot of discussion relative to student debt that's out there. I mean, it's everywhere. It's not something that is going away quickly. And I think we're going to hear more about that within our own committee as well. But thank you, folks from the different schools and university systems that you are all represented. We appreciate you offering your information, and your knowledge is greatly appreciated. So have a great day. That said, folks, I'm going to bring the hearing on LD 1838 to a close at this time. Work session, and move on. So we will open our next work session, which is relative to LD 1845. That is an act to amend the education statutes. We have had some good discussions on this already, and honestly, trying to remember specifically where we left off. If there was, I think we probably asked something of you, Hillary, to come back with. Thank you.
Yes, if it's all right with the chairs, I think it would be good to bring in Joanne Allen and JC Holmes from the Department of Education. And this is this big department bill. And what the committee had asked and we had worked on last time is to go through the draft, flag any of the areas that still needed some further discussion. And I was also going to work and did work with Joanne Allen about revising a few of these sections related to the 55% to make sure that the language was reflective of the department's intent. I'm able to go through that with you today. And then of course, ultimately the committee can let me know what you would like to do. If it's all right with the committee, I will share my screen. And what I did, and I can send this out to you as well, is basically it's just an annotated version of the bill itself so that we can all make sure we're on the same page and the same line. And I think it's up to the committee whether you want me to just go through it all once first or whether you want to talk about each little point as we go. But I can start by sharing my screen.
Yeah, why don't you start your sharing, and we'll, I'm not seeing, I didn't hear anyone say anything either way. So why don't you just walk us through what you have?
Sure. So this is LD 1845. The very first point, which is just a flag for further discussion, was this provision on page 1 of the bill. And this has to do with the renaming of from school restructuring to school innovation. And the draft provided by the department included this word empathetic as it relates to the understanding of the various roles of stakeholders. And that was something the committee had wanted to just flag for some additional discussion. One change that I believe the committee was generally on agreement on at the last work session on this bill is in section 2, having to do with the curriculum requirements. The department had intended to just update the name of these requirements from the Maine Early Childhood Learning Guidelines to the Maine Early Learning Learning and Development Standards established by the department, and to strike through the reference to the Department of Health and Human Services. So I don't know that we need any further discussion on that, but my understanding if the committee moves forward with any amendment is that that change would be made. The next provision was the department let the committee know that they did not intend to make any amendments to this particular section, section 11 of the bill on page 4. So this strike through here is me saying not that anything's going to be repealed, but that this section would be removed from the bill and therefore the law would remain as it currently is. The next section that I had flagged for some further discussion is section 19 of the bill, which begins on page 6 and spills over onto page 7. The draft that was originally put forward had deleted this line about the state contribution to the cost of components of essential programs and services must be made in accordance with this subsection. This sentence should not have been deleted in the draft, and so this amendment would put that sentence back in as it is in current law. The department indicated that their intent was to only remove some of the outdated language. If that is the intent of the committee as well, this amendment would still remove this provision in paragraph A, which is, as you can see, only applied no later than fiscal year 2006 and 2007. So that is just outdated language. In paragraph B, you would still probably want to remove the last sentence here. This has to do with transition percentage. However, if you want to keep the law as it currently is, you would want to keep it as the state share of the total cost of funding public education from kindergarten to grade 12, as described by the essential programs and services, and not replace it with the components of essential programs and services. I know there was a question during the last discussion about the term kindergarten and whether that meant it to include pre-kindergarten as well. This is something that the committee may want to discuss further, but so the committee knows, although kindergarten generally in Title 20A only means kindergarten, the way the term is defined specifically for this chapter, the school funding formula chapter, which is 606-B, it does include pre-kindergarten. And I can pull up that a little bit if you want to delve deeper into that discussion, but for now, I'm just flagging it as something to come back to. The original draft also repealed this last blocked paragraph. And again, if the intent is just to keep it as current law, then I think you should keep it in and not delete it as was done in the original draft. That would just keep that section exactly as current law, just removing those outdated components. I'm going to come back to section 20 in just a moment because it'll make more sense after I talk a little bit about section 22. So I'm going to pull up a slightly different document very quickly. Okay, so this is section 22 of the bill. And what I'm showing you is what the department initially intended to make changes on for this section. Their intent was simply to repeal all of these old transition percentages that are included. So as everybody who knows, for many years, the department wasn't funding at 55%. So every year during the budget, a new percentage would be put forward for the base total, for the state share percentage, state share percentage plus the UAL, and then in the following subsection, the mill rate based on those percentages. So the department had intended, as I said, to just remove all of these old years. I had a little bit of back and forth with the department as well as the revisor's office to sort of try to figure out why the change was made and why it was drafted as it was. And what I ultimately came to, and my recommendation for the committee, is if the committee is interested in making no substantive changes, to just leave this as current law and not remove any language. And that is for two reasons. One is that the reason it was drafted the way it was is because the drafting system that's used couldn't really accommodate the revisions as proposed by the department. But the second, more substantive reason is that each of these paragraphs talk about annual targets for the state share percentage. And if you leave that language and only have that final line of 55%, you don't really have the context for why there were annual targets. And so my suggestion for the committee on this is that if the intent really is not to make any substantive changes, to remove this section from the bill and just leave it as current law. That being said, I'm going to go back to my other document and talk a little bit about section 20 of the bill. Section 20 of the bill would repeal a section of law that has to do with when the state share percentage is under 55%. There was a requirement that the state increase the state share percentage of the funding for the cost of essential program and services by at least 1 percentage point over the previous year until you get up to 55%. And it included that for those fiscal years that the cost is not sufficient to increase the state share percentage by at least 1 percentage point, no new programs or initiatives may be established for kindergarten to grade 12. There's no reason why the committee cannot repeal this section. It's a sort of an interesting where you have something that's sort of obsolete because the percentage is now at 55%. However, theoretically, if at some point the state share percentage goes less than 55% in the future, and this is repealed, then this requirement will no longer exist. So one potential amendment that the committee could make, if that's something you're concerned about, is to just amend this provision rather than repealing it to say, if the percentage goes back below 55%, then this is a requirement and the state would need to increase the state share percentage again until you get back up to 55%. So I give that, you don't need to do that. You can certainly repeal it, or you could leave it as is, although it's a little bit oddly obsolete. But that is one suggestion that would, I think, maintain sort of the intent of the current law and wouldn't be a substantive change. Section 24 of the bill and a few other sections that I'm going to just briefly go through on have to do with the adjusted total cost of components of essential programs and services. These all relate directly to those transition target percentages that are a bit obsolete now, although I do recommend leaving those percentage targets in law, as I just mentioned. It's a little odd to have something talking about an adjusted total cost that no longer exists. I spoke a little bit with Joanne Allen at the department, and they were still comfortable with these provisions referencing that transition percentage being repealed. And I did ask her to make sure she was here if the committee had additional questions about why they felt comfortable with that. This is same reference to the transition percentage in section 29 here. And then again, this is again referencing the transition percentage, and the department was comfortable with those provisions still being repealed as they would no longer be in use without a need for that transition percentage since the transition is no longer active. And then last but not least, you heard at the public hearing in the work session, first work session on this bill, that the department did not want to include any of the revisions as proposed in the bill regarding the small scale school construction projects. So as drafted, this big X does not mean anything would be repealed. It just means that these sections would be removed from the bill, and therefore the law related to these small scale school construction projects would remain as it currently is. The one thing I have not touched on yet that I also need to flag for discussion is the conversation about changing the name of the standard for science and technology to science and engineering. So this was brought up in, I have to go back and find that section of the bill quickly. It is in section 5 of the bill on page 3. And I had told the committee that I would help bring some context to that, and I can either do that now or I can take a breath and let you discuss everything else I just talked about and come back to that portion whenever the committee would like.
Let's come back to that particular one, please.
I do have it flagged so that we will not finish any discussion without having that conversation as well.
Sure. Any question? Ms. Holmes, you have your hand up. Thank you.
Once you do the finance pieces, if you have questions about section 5, excuse me, Beth Lambert, I believe, is in the waiting room.
Thank you very much. Representative Brennan.
Thank you, Senator Rafferty. And Ms. Whistler, I'm just amazed at your ability to go through this and to understand the different languages and how it ties together. So I have two questions. One is that the concern that was raised last time we looked at this bill, that there was differences between the revisor's office and between DOE, and you were going to attempt to resolve those differences. Have you been able to do that?
I think as I have gone through with my suggestions today, I think so, yes.
Great. Well,
ultimately, this bill, if the committee moves forward with the amendment, will have to go through again the full process with the revisor's office. Any questions or concerns that comes up at that time, I would certainly bring back to the committee for language review, but I do believe I have addressed both sides.
Okay. And secondly, when you talked about the percentages in terms of school funding and 55%, and if the state weren't at 55%, could that also be dealt with in the budgeting process by simply notwithstanding and then put in the percentage amount that the state might be at that time, and as opposed to repealing different sections, or could it simply be dealt with in the budgeting process with the notwithstanding?
So I'm not exactly clear on your question regarding the notwithstanding provision, but what I would say is, generally speaking, all of the information regarding 55% has been done in the budget process,
right?
Which is one reason why keeping that paragraph 7 as it is in current law probably makes a lot of sense, so that you're not ending up with, you're going to have some budget, maybe trying to make a change, you have this bill trying to make a change, and if the idea is not to make any substantive changes, then my suggestion is just to leave it as is.
Okay, thank you.
I did just email that document I just went through to the full committee, so you should have it in your email now as well.
Any other questions, folks, for Hillary at this time? So then, Hillary, if we could, again, that's great. I guess I'm still not certain on that. There was sort of a protection. Was that, I guess I would call it a protection. So if we're at 55 now and we went, hypothetically, we went back, let's say we went back to 53, there's a built-in protection. If we keep things the way they are, there's a built-in protection that would increase it by at least 1%.
Right. So previously, there was this requirement in law that if the state was under the 55%, that the state had to increase it by 1 percentage point each year. Now, that comes with a really, really large caveat, of course, which is that the legislature itself is responsible for the funding, and whether the legislature funds that 1% is up to the legislature. My only caution for the committee was that if that provision is repealed, and if at some point in the future the state goes below the 55%, that provision would no longer apply. And I just didn't want the committee to accidentally repeal something that perhaps you didn't want to. But it is a little bit weird to just leave that language when we're currently at 55%, because it doesn't really seem to fit, it doesn't really seem to apply, which is why I suggested that little tweak to just say, if the state isn't funding at 55%, then this would kick in. But again, the committee does not need to make that amendment if you'd prefer to either just repeal it because you feel it's no longer necessary, or to leave it as is.
It's hard to predict the future. Thank you for that clarification.
And again, it would ultimately be up to the legislature if that happens at that time as to what they funded.
Thanks. So I think the one area that we didn't discuss yet was on page 3, section 5, under number 1, the language related to the science as it stands now, science and technology. And then there was we were talking about science and engineering. So want to go through that for us?
Yes, I would love to, and I will pull off a document which I can send out to you as well. I tried to pull together quickly a brief legislative history of science and engineering standards. During the 129th legislature, those of you who were on the committee at the time may recall the committee had a bill which was LD 283. And that was a resolve regarding the learning results, chapter 132, and these come every couple of years. We have another one we'll be hearing a public hearing on a different standard. One of the parts of that chapter change was adoption of the next generation science standards and changing the name from science and technology to the science and engineering standard. As the committee, I'm sure, knows, one thing that can be tricky sometimes with these resolves is that they cannot be turned into acts, and therefore they cannot also make statutory changes. So this is a situation where the committee had adopted this change of this name in the rule, but a change was not made in the statute itself. During the second regular session of the 129th, the committee had a bill LD 703, which was sort of a placeholder bill. And one of the changes that the majority of the committee had voted to make was to make this correction for science and engineering. You may recall, if any of this sounds familiar, you may recall last session you actually had a bill LD 68, which I think was Representative Crockett's bill. And that bill changed the name of the career and the life and career development standards into the life and career readiness standards. That was a change that was also going to be proposed in LD 703. That bill died on early adjournment, but LD 68 made that legislative fix last session. So what I pulled together here, the bill in front of you only makes this change in one section, but this standard appears in many sections throughout statute, and I have included them all here. It has in the elementary course of study, junior high and middle school course of study, the comprehensive program instruction. This is the one that's actually in the bill. The section on main learning results, section 6209. The parameters for essential instruction in the same section 6209, subsection 2. So if the committee does want to move forward with that change, at the very least, I would suggest that the committee should move forward that change in each part of Title 20A, so it's consistent. I did pull some materials. I know Representative Lyman had asked this question originally, excuse me, and I provided her some additional materials. What I am not able to do, because I'm not part of the rulemaking process, as that is an executive branch function, is talk a lot more in depth about why it was important to the department and to stakeholders in the field to make the name change from science and technology to science and engineering. And so I did ask that Beth Lambert be present so that she could provide a little bit more of that why, if the committee wants to delve into that further. But that's the history of that name change. And I would say, if the committee doesn't need to make that change, the rule is supposed to be consistent with the statute, and the statute trumps the rule, and so it is a little odd that those are different. But if you are going to make the change, I do recommend making the change throughout anywhere that phrase appears in statute.
Thanks very much. And you said that Ms. Lambert is available. Good morning.
Good morning.
welcome back and thanks for joining us. So we're back to our clarifications relative to science and engineering and the term technology. So.
Sure, I would just offer that, in the committee of educators that we brought together to make this change, and in looking at the next generation science standards, it was a major shift in really looking at the doing of science and the defining and designing the problems and designing the solutions, which is really the engineering piece, and this shift that is made in the NGSS, or the Next Generation Science Standards. And in doing so, engineering became a very important word to the committee and into the standards. And I don't think the question was so much about engineering being there, but the removal of technology. And I really think the idea of removing technology is at one time, certainly when technology was used really closely with science, it was more referring to the connotation of the application of the scientific method and science. Now in 2020 technology, the connotation and the use of that is really around the tools that you get, that you use. And so engineering is the doing, the using of those tools to solve and design solutions, to ask questions and design the solutions to those. And so the educators that came together really felt like engineering represented what students were being asked in their science classes to do under these new standards, and that technology was outdated and should be removed from that.
Thank you. Representative Salisbury.
I just wanted to make sure that I was understanding the information that Hillary just shared, which was really helpful. And so it sounds like, I'm just confirming. So the change was made back in the 129 to remove technology, but it doesn't sound like it was removed fully in all of those other sections. So the change has already been made. What we're discussing now is to make sure that it's consistent throughout. Am I understanding that part right?
If I may, I think that is right. I do want to be clear that what we're doing is a little backward, because normally the statute should change first. So this is a little backfill. But from a drafting perspective, certainly consistency is important, and that change has been made in the rule, and the statute does not reflect that change.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you for clarifying that.
Representative Stearns.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My ultimate goal is to make sure that we do not lay a further burden, if you want, onto the field or onto the department. With that said, the word technology, we use the term STEM often. And of course, we have math, and we have science, and we have engineering. And my question is, if you have this YouTube document to go by, and it were it was clearly expressed by this committee in that adding back in the word technology does not wish to create a whole new department, but merely to recognize all of the components of STEM. Would that work for the department and for those in the field to, in other words, look at it as simply a name change that reflects STEM and move forward with the work as you're doing now? I don't know if I made that clear or not, but a simple word change, I have no trouble with at all, as long as it doesn't incur large fiscal notes and development of burdens, work burdens on various folks. And that was to anyone in the department that could, I mean, could you take that word, if we did it all through every area, could you take that word, absorb it, and move forward without any implications or significant implications?
And when you say that word, do you mean engineering or do you mean technology? Just keep technology.
I would keep engineering and add technology back in.
Yeah.
So it would be science, technology, and engineering.
So I think it's certainly something I would advocate for that over removing engineering. I think engineering is really an important and crucial piece based on, again, not just my opinion, but the work of all of the science educators that we brought together felt very strongly and is supported by all of the work of the Next Gen Science Standards. I would say in terms of what you're asking, as far as does that then open up more work and would then end more burden onto schools, it really, the T, when you look at in STEM and in the 2022 connotation of technology, also really lends itself to thinking more around the computer science and that piece of it, which is a very important component of STEM and is something that the department, as I think you're all aware from previous presentations, is integrating and working with educators to put in so that it's not this add-on burden, but rather a part of PK-12 education. And so I would say it's not just a word to slip in there without that being in future revisions of the standards, something that would then be, well, is this a requirement for that piece, that T, that computer science piece of it, to then be part of science classes, which overwhelmingly science educators, we talked about it during the review process, overwhelmingly said there's just no room in current science classes to add that on. You will have to push out other pieces of science, and it was agreed that that was not the way to do that. So I guess that would be, I think it's better than removing engineering, but that would be my concern, and why the removal of technology from that is because it's really come to mean this different thing in 2022 than it did in 97 when the standards were written.
Thank you. I had
Thank you.
questions from Representative Sampson and Millet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Lambert. And just to follow up on what Representative Stearns just said, I mean, and what Ms. Risler was talking about is that the rules, that the statutes trump the rules, and it was demonstrated that technology is already in the statutes. I'm not quite sure. I understand what you're saying, Ms. Lambert, but yet it's in the statutes already. And the engineering is an add-on. It's after the technology, correct? It came at, I mean, the technology was already there, and now we're changing it to engineering. My question is, if it's technology is already in the statutes, people in the field have already got their systems in place. Why removing it? Why is it such a burden? And maybe I'm just asking the same question Representative Stearns asked, but I'm just saying it's already in the statutes. What's the big deal of just saying technology and engineering?
And that's where I think if that is the sort of will of the committee of sort of to compromise in there, then that is when the standards were revised. And I understand what Mr. Zoll has explained around that it's kind of backwards, that the rule changed and not the statute first. But we do know that in schools, they're aligned to the standards, that's what they are working with. And in fact, when we came together to revise the science standards, which were the first in the revision cycle that we did, choosing science first was a large piece, had a lot to do with the fact that educators had already in the field made a switch because of how passionately they felt about the importance and the effectiveness of these next generation science standards and how they reflected really the way that science needed to be taught and how students need to interact with it in order to be ready for the reality of the world today. And so I guess I would just say that I understand the rules of how statute trumps rule, and I don't think that educators are going by the statute that says science and technology and not following the next generation science standards, because we know from surveys that we did with the field when we were doing that revision that the majority of classrooms had already made that switch before we even officially switched the rule. And so I would just follow with that. But I guess at the end of the day, you're right. I mean, if it's a word, and technology, it feels important to keep that in with engineering and with science. I would definitely say that would be preferred over just reverting back to science and technology, which doesn't acknowledge the role of engineering in these current standards.
Could I have a quick follow-up, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Thank you. So I'm with you, but you're almost making my point by talking about what the field's already doing. You know what? Teachers respond to what the needs are, and they're going forward. And then we are playing catch up as a committee to change the standards to what the teachers are doing. I think I'm not advocating getting rid of engineering. That's not my position at all. I'm just saying adding the technology piece. They've already been doing this in the field, and to some degree. And my thinking is let's just keep it there and not muddy the waters. Just they're going to do what they're going to do. And I know we obsess over these standards. And Miss Lambert, you probably know, well, actually Miss Holmes does too, how I have obsessed over standards. But the reality is teachers are going to do what they're going to do. And I think that this might be we're just at this point, if we might just be splitting hairs at this point.
Yeah, and I would just say on that I agree, and the ask from educators was to name these the science and engineering standards, and so that would be aligned to what they are doing. I think adding technology in there would be something that would be because we feel like it needs to be in there, but is not reflective of what is actually happening out there. So that I think that's where I see where we agree, and also where I think we're coming at it at different places.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Millet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question, and then I'd like to share some thoughts. So if we leave technology and statute, Ms. Risler, would that trigger the need for another rules revision?
I don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is because the committee in the 129th legislature did affirmatively adopt the rules change to science and engineering without at that time changing the statute.
Okay, thank you. So we need to remember that this committee passed unanimously those rules changes. And the reason why we did was because there was, this was coming from educators. They were asking for this. And it reflected a multi-year process of a standards review. And so I kind of feel like we're having a discussion about something where educators had already resolved it. And I'd like to respect that. Certainly, we all unanimously did that in the 129th. I went back and looked at testimony. It was non-controversial. There was nobody banging on our doors asking us to stop this, that this was wrong, that this was going to cause problems. But because, in fact, the content standards review involved educators from the very beginning with public hearings and writing teams and steering committees and more public hearings, etc. So I get everyone's concern about the word technology, but as Representative Sampson said, our educators have been out there doing this. This is what they asked us to do. And I would like us to just finish our work and bring our statute in alignment with the rules that reflect the work of our educators.
I muted myself. I'm sorry. Representative Dodge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are we ready for a motion on LD 1845, please?
Prior to you raising your hand, I had asked, I was muted and I apologize, but I had asked, are there any additional questions or discussion? So, and I will hold off on the motion at this point. I do have a couple of hands up. Representative Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make a shift from what we are discussing, if I may, to dig into the point that Ms. Risler brought up in section 21, the issue with the funding K-12 and what she had recommended and what she just presented was on page 6. So section 19, number 1, the last sentence on number 1, that would be replaced. It would not be struck out. It would stay as is in law. That A would be struck out, and that B, the adding, because it currently funding public education from kindergarten through grade 12 as described, that is struck out, and that would be replaced, and the components of would be struck out. This is an issue that I would like us to discuss that I think is important. Thank you.
Representative Lyman.
Oh, I was just getting ready to lower my hand. I don't want to redirect the conversation. Thank you.
Okay, so
Would it be helpful for the committee to bring that back up on the screen just for a moment so we can all see what we're talking about?
Please, that would help me.
I'll lower it back down after a minute so that you can see each other. But it's here. It's page 6 of the bill, starting at line 37, section 19. It's unfortunate it's split over 2 pages. It doesn't make it a little bit difficult. In the original bill, this sentence here that's highlighted in yellow had been stricken. This amendment to the amendment would put that sentence back in. And specifically here in paragraph B, in yellow, the funding public education from kindergarten to grade 12 as described by was stricken by the bill. The amendment to the amendment would put that back in and leave that as current law.
Okay. And so relative to that specific section, question, Representative Stearns.
I'd like to thank Hillary for her excellent work on that. And my suggestion would be to follow her suggestion on it, based on the premise and the tenet, if you will, that this does not make a substantive change to law. And I think that's an important tenet for us to hold as we're doing this difficult work. So I agree with that change.
And I agree with your statement as well, but Hillary does wonders for us here. Anything else relative to that? All right, so let's go. Was there another area? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion. Representative Stearns.
Again, this is the word empathetic is tiny. And I think a quick straw poll, it's not a hill for me to die on. It's just I don't think, great language. That, and the other piece is, if we have a motion, I know that we're going to continue to discuss the technology piece there, and if we don't have a motion, we're going to continue to discuss the technology piece either way. So that would be up to the chair. But we ought to make a decision on the word empathetic, and if we want to leave it, fine. If we don't, I'm fine with that as well.
Well, let's go to that page. I believe that is, as I have my pages labeled, I've got that as page 1. I know it's under section 1, about 3/4 of the way down the page. I think it's in line 30.
I would hate to see someone approach an official at the department and say you weren't empathetic enough on as you.
So if we remove the word empathetic, we're looking at school innovation. School innovation includes an understanding of the various roles of stakeholders. I see some hands up. I'm sorry, I'm looking up, looking down. I don't know who was first. Excuse me. I'll go from left to right here on my screen. Representative Sampson, followed by Representative Dodge. I think you're muted. I'm sorry.
Man, I was having a moment of brilliance there and you didn't hear it. I'm so sorry. Anyway, I just, the word empathetic is highly subjective. So my suggestion would be that Ms. Risler is quite the wordsmith, and she might have some recommendations of what we could replace it with. It should be something that if this is something that's being measured, it needs to be objective and not all over the place. It's a subjective word, and that's my objection to it.
And you guys, and of course, everybody's moved since I last looked at my screen. I think it was Representative Dodge, followed by Representative Millette and Representative Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My motion will include the removal of the word empathetic, and if you wish, asking Ms. Risler to make appropriate adjustments according to her vocabulary expertise.
Thank you. Representative Millette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just concur with Representative Stearns. I think we can just simply remove empathetic. Understanding is sufficient.
Thank you. I had Senator Daughtry, Representative Brennan, Representative Lyman.
I feel like I'm going to go out on a limb here, but I'm going to go with the committee wherever we get here, that I really feel like empathetic is not the biggest deal of a word, because I mean, if you look in the definition, it's simply showing an ability to understand and share the feelings of another. And oddly, I was having a meeting with area employers about what's missing for soft skills for potential employees. And one of the words that they mentioned, or skills, was empathy, especially with what we're dealing with the pandemic, and we're increasingly seeing pretty hostile customers. That being said, if the will of the committee is to strike it, I will totally go along. But yeah, I think right now we could all use a lot of empathy and to make the world a better place. So, but we'll go along with what everyone else thinks.
Thank you. And I lost my order, but I think it's Representative Brennan and
I agree with what everybody said. I think we could just say "and understanding," and you could argue that empathetic and understanding is redundant. So I think "and understanding" is fine.
Representative Lyman.
And I would just ask if it's possible for the committee to consider the conversation about engineering and technology and respecting STEM and including technology with engineering. I never suggested not having engineering. I just suggested that we maintain technology.
So we have a firm inclusion of engineering and a clarification on the technology. piece, correct?
Inclusion of technology in the language.
Yeah. Representative Dodge?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would defer to Representative Sampson prior to my making my motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Dodge. I just wanted to make sure that in your amendment, in your motion, that you include the changes that we have discussed today, especially in section 21. And yeah, I think that's the big one. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Representative Dodge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to make a motion that we approve LD 1845 with the following changes and amendments. That we remove the word empathetic, that we include the changes that were made today, I believe, to section 21 and 20 under advisement from Ms. Risler if I have left something out. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have I have a hand up from Hillary, so.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Ms. Risler had proposed other changes as well, and I'm looking at section 19. I think I think a simpler way to say it, if we are in agreement, is to accept the changes proposed by Ms. Risler, so we don't leave anything anything out of there, because they are multitudinous.
Thank you. And that could be why her hand was up. Hillary, I'm going to assume your hand's still up and give you a chance to, does that clarify things?
Thanks. Yes. Thank you. That was going to be my question. Is it just, do you want to go forward with the changes as I drafted them for a presentation today, with the addition of having been flagged for consideration, removing the word empathetic on page 1. And then I think the only outstanding question would be on the science, technology, engineering piece, if the committee wants to make a change there. And if so, what it is exactly.
Thank you. Senator Woodson, you have your hand up as well.
Yes, I was just following up on what Hillary just said, and I wasn't clear on if Representative Dodge's motion included the word technology.
Representative Dodge, can you make that clarification?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will gladly do so. I do not believe that we should include that change due to the fact that teachers have already made those long discussions and as referenced by Representative Millett. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. So I'm gonna, Hillary.
Sorry, I'm going to have to ask for further clarification. Does that mean you don't want to make any change, or you want to make the science and engineering change but not include technology?
Representative, can you clarify that before you make your motion? Just clarify your intent, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, my intent is to make the change to science and engineering and not include the word technology out of respect for our educators throughout the state and the work that they have done. And if I could just give an opinion here, there is absolutely no way that our education in the state of Maine will go forward without extensive use of technology. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Stearns, your hand was up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Boy, we've come across a real chicken and egg piece here.
Yeah.
And again, the basic tenet is to not change statute. And statute, that's a fundamental change. It seems like the rules were changed, and I do respect the process from the field, the thinking behind it, and I fully understand it. It would be, you can't go backward in time. It would be wonderful if back in the day, back when this happened in the 129th, while we're at it, we need to change the statute up above, and we wouldn't be having this discussion right now. But in this language cleanup bill, if you will, to change statute, it's been reported, mentioned several times by our analysts that statute trumps rule. And if we follow the tenet of not wanting to change statute, I'm thinking that we might want to leave that and have that come up before the committee as a separate bill at some point to do so.
So just for me, for clarification, because I've underlined, I've crossed out, and I might have actually eliminated lines. So if we didn't change statute, then we could not add engineering, because that would be changing. That is proposed change, correct? I might have.
That's the point that I just made.
Right.
I think it's a shame that we can't add engineering. However, if we do and remove technology, we are changing statute to match rule, which appears to be backward in order. So to avoid the dilemma, perhaps we make no change there. It becomes a high-profile checkpoint for a department bill coming forward at some point before some legislature to fix that issue.
Thank you. I'm gonna, Ms. Lambert, if you would be kind enough to address our last couple of comments, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, I would just say that for us, adding in technology is not is far more in line with where and respectful, I feel like, to the field than to not acknowledge engineering and the work that was really done to make that change. And so for the department, we would support keeping in science, keeping in technology and making it science, technology and engineering to move it forward.
Thank you for that. And I see there are a couple of hands up, but I need to regroup a little bit. I'm gonna ask for a couple of minutes of a Connor caucus, if I could. So I forget how to do that, to be very honest with you. So we have to mute ourselves and then go somewhere else, right? But we can't leave.
Yes.
Right?
Sorry to jump in from under the sink, but we all have our different caucus Zoom links, and I can resend it out to ours.
So I'm going to stop that.
Yep. So the protocol from committee version is you can leave this call. This call will stay, and you can rejoin it when you are finished with your caucus.
So I can hit leave.
Correct.
Okay. I'm leaving.
All right, so I wasn't sure if you were there, but I saw your eyes move just now, so.
I was gonna go back to the caucus, and I know I left you guys behind, but I just checking on you.
No, we're on our way, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Boy, that having your pipes burst, whoa.
That's an ugly scene.
That's why I live in southern Maine, so we don't have those things.
Well, I wish that was true.
I know.
Literally the wall right here, this was probably 20 years ago.
Right.
I had to redo the whole wall and
Really?
everything.
Wow.
Because the pipe just gave way, right?
Wow.
I have a 3-foot hole in my living room ceiling right now through the pipes.
So you guys are saying that you have indoor plumbing?
That was very insensitive of us, Representative Stearns.
Oh, yeah.
So do we have everybody?
I know that we have a couple of folks that are in. I know Representative McCray had to leave for another committee. I know that. And I think we have everyone that we expected. And we're back on. Eli, correct? Oh, we actually never left. We left, but we're back in. All right. Representative Dodge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, I would like to withdraw my previous motion, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Brennan.
Yes, thank you, Senator. I'd like to make a motion ought to pass on LD 1845 and adopt the recommendations that have been proposed to us by our staff analyst and the amendment with two stipulations. One is to remove the word empathetic and just say and understanding. And secondly, that we adopt the language of technology, science and engineering. And that section.
Thank you. Representative Stearns.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would second.
Thank you. Representative Millett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Rissler, can you discuss what potential issues there may be by making this change in that one around technology in that one section while leaving the other sections of statute that you've identified for us unchanged? Thank you.
So I think the issue with doing that is that you're talking about the same thing throughout all parts of the statute. And so if you're changing it in one place and not in another place, it implies that you are talking about two different things. Now, practically, what does that mean in terms of how will the department interpret that? Will they feel they need to make any changes to their rule or not? I'm not sure. I think I would just be speculating, which I don't want to do because I don't know. But I do think from a drafting perspective, when you talk about interpretation, if you have terms that are different, a court looking at them assumes that they're different. And so if you make that change in one place and not somewhere else, it creates an implication that it means something different in that section of law than that term means somewhere else.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, so I have, oh, yes, Representative Millet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So given what Ms. Risler explained, I would ask that Representative Brennan consider following the recommendations of Ms. Risler about incorporating these changes so there's consistency across education statute.
I'm not inclined to do that at this particular point. I think there are a number of us on the committee that we're more comfortable with using science and engineering, but in deference to some other comments that were made by people on the committee, we will include technology in this particular section. And if we have to come back and revisit it at some other point, we can. But I think for the purposes of 1845, including technology and science engineering, seems to be the consensus of the committee at this point.
Thank you. Senator Daughtry, hand is up.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And just to go back again, I do have concerns, like Ms. Risler said, if it's inconsistent. I mean, I don't see this being like some of the other bills we've dealt with in this legislature where there's inconsistency amongst the statutes and it causes a pretty big crisis. I mean, I hope something as simple as these words, but I think if we want to keep it as such, you know, in deference to our work here in one area, why wouldn't it apply to all of the areas? I mean, I think we need to aim for consistency in statute in everything we look at, whether it's, you know, this bill or, you know, graduation standards or, you know, the main arts, you know, this portion of statute, because I think when we have two different sections that don't agree, you're just setting yourself up for coming back to this instead of doing a one-shot deal. And if we were to look at it in another bill, like you're saying, Representative Brennan, wouldn't it make sense just to change it all in the statute now? And then we can have another bill where we can like get down in the gritty of vernacular and terminology between engineering and science and et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, well, that said, so we do have a motion by Representative Brennan to ought to pass as amended. That was seconded by Representative Stearns. I'll put that to a vote, and I'll ask that Eli, if you would be kind enough to call a roll, and keep in mind that you will have to be visible in order to vote. Thank you.
Absolutely. So on a vote of ought to pass as amended, Senator Rafferty.
Yes.
Senator Daughtry. Senator Woodsum. Oh, my apologies again.
No worries. I just was not fast enough to go on there. I will vote yes.
Senator Woodsum. Representative Brennan.
Yes.
Representative Crockett.
Yes.
Representative Dodge.
Yay.
Representative Lyman.
Yes.
Representative McCray. Representative Millet.
Yep.
Representative Roach.
Yay.
Representative Salisbury.
Sorry, did you hear me? I said yes. Sorry about that.
Thank you. No worries. Representative Sampson.
Yes.
Representative Stearns.
Yes.
With a vote of 11 to ought, the motion passes.
Thank you very much, Eli. Thank you, folks. We'll work through that, and I'll remind, it was Representative McCray and who did I miss? McCray.
Senator Woodson was also absent from this vote.
Okay, thank you. can be reminded to vote. Thank you very much. So the work session on 1845 is now closed, and I believe, oh dear, been everywhere with notes and screens. Our next order of business is, I believe, report.
Sure, if I may,
Thank you.
Senator.
Yes.
So we had the GEA report scheduled for some just brief follow-up today. The committee last week asked me to draft some just sample reports or letters for the GEA. But as you know, you also heard from the commissioner last weekend, and the chairs had asked Dr. Fern Desjardins from the State Board of Education to just talk briefly to the committee about the strategic plan that she had emailed out to you. So I don't know if you would like to sort of do that first and then get into the discussion about how the committee may want to move forward on the reports themselves.
Yeah, we could do that with Ms. Desjardins. Thank you.
She's joining us now.
A second. Okay. Senator Rafferty, Representative Brennan, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Education and Cultural Affairs. My name is Fern Desjardins, Chair of the State Board of Education. Thank you for inviting me to present the 5-year strategic plan of the Maine State Board of Education as part of the Government Evaluation Act Program Evaluation Report. In your binder for the State Board of Education's GEA report, you have a copy of the 5-year strategic plan that ended on December 31st, 2021. That is because the GEA report was due on November 1, and the State Board only finalized the 2022 to 2026 strategic plan at our December 15 workshop and unanimously voted to approve the plan in the business meeting that afternoon. You should have all received a copy of the current plan through Hillary Reisler, as she mentioned earlier. I wish to highlight the following in the strategic plan and provide you the opportunity to ask questions. So on the first page of the plan, you will see that the board developed 4 priority areas. Priority 1 is board effectiveness, and the priority and the goals under board effectiveness are all highlighted in blue in our strategic plan. Priority 2 is career technical education. And again, the priority and all of its goals are highlighted in yellow. Priority 3 is certification and higher ed. That is highlighted in pink. And priority 4 is on school construction and renovations, and that is highlighted in green. It was at our annual retreat in August that the board decided on the plan's format and began fleshing the components of the plan. The format is the same for all of our goals in that we address the rationale for the goals, actions that will be taken by the board, the expected outcomes, the metrics that will be used to assess the success of meeting the goals, and the milestones for each of the 5 years from 2022 to 2026. Because the state board accomplishes most of its work through its standing committees, the retreat agenda provided time for committees to begin working on the new strategic plan. DOE staff and others who typically attend our committee meetings were invited to the planning sessions at the retreat. The work began with our partners at the retreat and continued in committee meetings after the retreat. So looking at our priorities, if you go to page 2, you see our first priority, and that's board effectiveness. This stems from our board conversations at the August retreat. Our facilitator, who was the NASB president, President Robert Hull, shared results of the state board's self-assessment survey that had been completed a couple weeks prior to the retreat. On the survey from NASB, more board members had provided feedback regarding the overall board effectiveness in 4 categories. Those categories being mission and goals, state board agenda, board operations, and stakeholder engagement. After the retreat, I set up an ad hoc committee to work on board effectiveness to draw up priority 1, and that committee continues to be active in the implementation process. There are 3 goals in this priority area. If you look at page 2, you see the first goal, which is to review and revise our mission, vision, bylaws, and governance authorities to ensure we are fulfilling our roles and responsibilities. That goal also includes to enhance communications with our stakeholders. And that communication piece is picked up in goal 3. And that is about building relationships with our educational partners. So there is a relation between goals 1 and 3. And our second goal is to specify the duties of our committee chairs, because it was the consensus of especially our new members that they felt that they really didn't know all the responsibilities of committee chairs. And so we are going to address that in our strategic plan. We also want to find ways to enhance student involvement and student voice, as students are equal members of our state board. And we want to increase decision-making based on evidence and high-quality data. That there was discussion that sometimes we make decisions without really looking at comprehensive data in making and arriving at decision-making. So we want to enhance our gathering of data. Priority 2 is on page 6. It begins there, and this is in regards to career and technical education. The CTE committee considered strategic planning priorities at its July and all the way through to its December meetings. In addition to our own members, they considered input from the field that included representatives from the Maine Department of Education, the Maine Community College System, Educate Maine, MELMAC, MACT, which is the Maine Administrators of Career and Technical Education. And we do have directors from CTE centers and regions that attend our CTE committee meetings as well. They also considered data that was generated by MEPRI, and they came out with 5 goals. The first goal is on advocating for funding, and generally funding for equipment for the facilities and maintenance of facilities, all aspects of funding for CTE. The second goal is on continuing efforts to build high quality CTE offerings to meet the labor market needs in grades 9 through 12, with an emphasis on exploratory experiences in grades 9 and 10 and in our middle schools. The third goal with CTE is program alignment with secondary CTE coursework and college and university credits, between CTE coursework and graduation requirements, more collaboration between education and the workforce, and for a smooth transition from high school to the Maine community college system. The fourth goal focuses on reducing barriers that prevent students from taking CTE classes, such as scheduling and transportation. And their fifth goal is developing partnerships and collaborations on initiatives for joint planning, alignment, coordination, and leveraging of resources. That takes us to the third priority area, which is certification in higher ed, which begins on page 13. And the committee worked with the DOE's Deputy Commissioner, Deputy Commissioner Dan Chuda, the director and the team coordinator of the Office of Higher Education and Educator Support. That would be Angel Laredo and Stephanie Fife. And we also worked with the post-secondary and educator preparation coordinator, which would be Jason Libby. And we have 5 goals with certification in higher ed. The first one is to bring to final adoption the major substantive changes in Chapter 115, which we've been diligently working on. And the hope here is that we will have fewer barriers for candidates seeking initial certification. The second goal is a review of Chapter 114 and to bring to final adoption some amendments to the rule. Chapter 114 is the purpose, standards, and procedures for the review and approval of preparation programs for education personnel. So we want to be taking a look at that once we've finished Chapter 115. Our third goal is to study reasons for educator shortages and compile a list of strategies for identified solutions. The fourth goal is protecting student safety and well-being while under the care of educators who demonstrate appropriate verbal, physical, emotional, and social boundaries. I find this to be a very important goal. I bring to your attention page 16, which I'd like you to look at the rationale where, we state there has been discussion about removing evidence of good moral character. And I know that what has moved forward with Chapter 115 now no longer includes that, but there was a lot of discussion on good moral character with certification and higher ed in our committee, because the consensus group and the professional standards board were proposing that good moral character be taken out of Chapter 115. We had concerns about that. And we felt that though we have the criminal history records check, that the events of last fall with the media, with the articles that appeared in our newspapers, with regards to things happening, a couple cases of students, things that happened in our schools, that we needed a better understanding of legal regulations and processes currently in place. And that we really needed to do that in making informed decisions on rules and proposed legislation. And I also bring to your attention the outcomes. Why are we doing this? We want public trust that pre-K students are under the care of educators who demonstrate appropriate verbal, physical, emotional, and social boundaries to promote the health, safety, and well-being of our students. So I find goal number 4 to be extremely important, and you see the milestones that we have in place to accomplish that. Going to the 5th goal with certification in higher ed, this focuses on benefiting from what we learned during the pandemic and the resources provided to schools as a result of the pandemic. We would like to see pre-K to 16 and adult learner education in 2026 be different than it was in 2020 prior to COVID-19. We find that there are a lot of good things that have been learned through the pandemic, and we need to be looking at school setting options, instructional delivery, assessment, accountability. Let's benefit from the good things we've learned through the pandemic that can continue. And the last piece of our strategic plan is with priority 4, which is school construction and renovations. The School Construction Committee worked primarily with Scott Brown, who's the Director of School Facilities at the Maine Department of Education, and the committee came up with 4 goals. The first one is the development of a statewide inventory and assessment of pre-K to 12 public schools and CTE centers and regions. Our thought is, how can we plan for future construction and renovation needs if we don't know the condition of our schools right now? That we'd like to really know about the ventilation systems, the sprinkler systems, the presence of asbestos, the different factors that are important in decision-making for school construction. So we'd like to have an assessment of our current facilities, where do we stand with them? Second goal, the realization of LD 705, in which by July 1, 2026, all Maine public schools will be meeting the standards governing air quality and ventilation. This surrounds the work that is currently happening with our Chapter 60, Chapter 61, and Chapter 125, where we're looking at those amendments so that we can make LD 705 be realized. And so that is moving forward, and we want to see that all the way to July 1st, 2026. The third goal, advocating for additional funding to support school construction and renovations. We all know that school construction costs are going up the roof, are getting higher. And we want to be able to keep the current pace that we have in approving construction projects from the school construction priority list. That can only happen if we increase funding for school construction and renovations. And our fourth and final goal is to work towards a 2025-2026 rating cycle for the major capital school construction program priority lists, and also for the integrated consolidated 9 through 16 educational facility priority lists. And we'd like for those to be released by the spring of 2026. We had a 2010-2011 priority list. Then there was a 2017-2018 priority list. So to keep that momentum, we are wanting to move forward with having a 2025-2026 priority lists. Thank you for this opportunity to present the State Board of Education's 5-year strategic plan for 2022 to 2026, and I would be happy to answer any questions that the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Desjardins. I see a hand up from Representative Salisbury and also Representative Brennan.
Quickly, not really a question, but more of a comment, Mr. Jardin. Thank you so much for this. As a new legislator, new to this committee, I'm impressed with the level of work that went into this report, and the work that you all do is staggering to me. I didn't really realize that. So I've been very impressed with the data and the information and what you do for education in Maine, and I just wanted to express that.
Thank you so much. You're very kind.
Thank you. Representative Brennan.
Thank you, Senator. And I would echo Representative Salisbury's comment. I deeply appreciate all the work you've done, and it's a very clear picture of what the State Board is attempting to do in terms of goals. I want to just ask you a question I asked you before, and you'll probably give me the same answer, but I wanted to ask it again. I have a second one about school construction, but the priorities that you have listed, which, they're fine. Again, they appear to be more representative of priorities of DOE. And then how do priorities such as things that we have before the Education Committee work their way potentially into the work plan or priorities of the State Board? So, for example, we have some issues around student achievement gap, about reading. We have bills before us about curriculum and things. Do you have the opportunity to step back and look at some of those other emerging and priority issues, or are you really kind of driven by the staff limitations you have and the work of the DOE?
Again, a very good question. And I come back to, we're a volunteer board, right, and it requires a lot of our time to get the work done that we want to get done. If you look at the strategic plan, I do feel that we have a very ambitious plan, and the only way we can do this is we have to rely on our resources that are available, and that is the Maine Department of Education that we do work very closely with. I have started attending, I've attended my first, I will be attending my second MEPRI meeting. And we're associated with the National Association of State Boards of Education, so I can get data, and I really value having them as a resource. They've helped me on a number of occasions. So NASB does have some data available to us, but we're really dependent on our committees and our all of our members to be able to reach for additional data. And that's why we've made it one of our priorities to base decisions on data and try to have data from various sources, not just from listening to listening from I don't want to say anything negative, but listening to only one source of information. We really want to be open about different data centers that can provide us with data that would be helpful in making decisions about academic performance and how we can help students and our schools improve in any way. And so we don't have a professional staff member looking at data, and that's addressed in the plan as well, looking at a number of things, whether it's lobbying, and maybe we shouldn't be lobbying, but providing testimony is what I should say, perhaps, in front of the Education Committee. We do it all ourselves. And so, again, we have some members that feel we should have a half-time or full-time professional staff member. I'm not sure. All I can say is that there are a number of us that spend a great amount of time looking at what can be done, what should be done, and how can we do it the best way we can within our limited resources.
Right. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And it may be in the future having some engagement between the state board and the Education Committee in terms of priority setting might be helpful. So in terms of just additional input and perspective. So thank you. My second question on school construction, you indicated that there might be another cycle or another round of applications in 2025, and that the last major school construction was in 2017. And again, this is just a comment, but when the legislation was originally passed in 2000 around school construction, it was envisioned that every 2 to 3 years, there would be an application process and a rating process for major school construction. And so now we're going to almost a 7-year cycle. Do you think it is a function of that we need more money that would allow us to have a cycle that we could then prioritize projects more on a more regular basis?
And of course, money drives the decisions, and I don't have the history here. If the Vice Chair Peter Geiger was with us, he would remember more details. But you could build a school for in 2010-11 in that span up to the 2017-18 list coming out. You could build a lot more schools. Out of the 2017-2018, we've only approved 5 projects. Right. The others are still, waiting for decision making. And of those 5 projects, they've not advanced greatly either. So when we're starting to be looking at the next cycle, keep in mind that these schools are in the making. And will we get to an approval of a 6th or a 7th or an 8th? We're thinking of opening up the application process at some point within our strategic plan for the next 5 years, that we have a new opportunity to apply and be visited and to have another list. But when you have 74 schools on a list in the 2017-18 plan, and those schools that are seeing that they're far from being able to make it to the top of the list will not be approved. Even your number 10 is, I'm sure, thinking I may not be approved for construction. And so the idea that originally what you mentioned is that this would happen every couple of years. That's you can see from the numbers, it's far from happening. if I may, I'd like to go back to something you said earlier, because I want to, it's very important to me. The state board does want to work with different entities. In fact, you've seen CTE works with very closely with MELMAC, with MACT, with, and we do take input from others. And the idea of working with the education committee, I think you see that in one of our goals as well, that we need to be working together, and you may have resources that would be helpful, if we have a common goal of, and ultimately, I'm sure a lot of things we want to accomplish are things you want to accomplish either. We're not going in different paths in different areas here. I think we have a lot more in common than we have that is different. And so I welcome that opportunity, and maybe I should be reaching out, or you should feel free to reach out to me whenever you see the opportunity that we can, that we really should have a conversation. I certainly would want to make that happen.
Good. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Senator Rafferty.
Thank you. Representative Dodge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Desjardins, for being here today. I have just a couple of questions. One also relates to school construction, and as you make your assessments about the facilities, does water quality also enter in that assessment, please?
Yes, what we would like to have is a comprehensive assessment of those things and that's part of our milestones, that we would identify what are the factors that we want to be included in this analysis, in this survey of all of our schools. And water quality is extremely important. In fact, the National Association just came out with, they had a special grant in which they did a lot of research, and they just sent out last month a whole pamphlet full of information about water quality. And I said pamphlet, but it's more of a journal type with lots of information. So water quality is definitely of importance and should be included in that list.
Thank you. And a follow-up, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Thank you. My second question deals with a reference you made to K-12 in one of your sections of your report. And I wondered, was that an oversight, or do you also address pre-K through 16? And where, and perhaps this answer is too involved, but where are you pre-K 16 concerned? And then are there other places where you are not, and why, please? Thank you.
Interesting that you questioned pre-K, because that is a conversation that was had a lot in our discussions of chapter 115 and looking at certification and pre-K being separate, and settling on K through 6. And so I am just questioning myself on where I said, whether I said K or pre-K. When we're looking at certification in higher ed, again, it depends on what we're looking at insofar as like if it's chapter 115. When we're looking at learning from the pandemic, I should have said pre-K, and I hope I said pre-K through 16 and higher ed and our adult learners. And in school construction, I should have said pre-K through 12, as we're looking at our assessment of all our facilities. And so if you could, do you remember, Representative Dodge, where I would have said just kindergarten?
May I answer, Mr. Chair?
Yes, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
It was just a general question, and certainly it sounds like you're on top of it as far as where it's appropriate and where not to do the broader or the more narrow. So thank you. I'm cool.
Okay.
And thank you for all your, wow, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Dodge.
Any other questions, folks? Not seeing any. Ms. Desjardins, would just again, thank you very much for being with us today. Most importantly, for your continued work. It's very helpful, obviously, and if you have a goal, one of your goals was mentioned to work close with this committee, we'd certainly welcome you back at any point and let us know what we can do to help you achieve that goal as well.
Thank you so much, Senator Rafferty and the entire committee. I appreciate this time, and I apologize that I've taken you away a bit from your lunch period, perhaps kept you from lunch.
We're good. Thank you. Have a nice day.
All of you, thank you.
Okay. I believe, Hillary, that does it, or did we have one other report?
My question for the committee at this point is whether the committee has additional questions related to the GEA report for the State Board of Education. And if not, I can pull up the draft letter and go through that and see if the committee is ready or willing to vote on that.
Let me tell one. Yeah, we have enough here. If you could pull that up, we'll take a look at the draft. Thank you.
Sure. And I had mentioned at our last meeting that this is sort of the basic, here's the information. So here's the draft letter. It goes to President Jackson and Speaker Fecto and would eventually get printed in the calendar the next time you're in session. It says, please accept this letter as a report of the findings of the Joint Standing Committee on Education and Cultural Affairs from its review and evaluation of the State Board of Education under the State Government Evaluation Act, Title III, Maine Revised Statutes, Chapter 35. Pursuant to the requirements of this act, the committee notified the State Board of Education by letter dated April 30th of 2021 of its intent to conduct a review. The State Board of Education submitted its report in November of 2021 and presented the report to the committee on January 13th of 2022. The committee has reviewed the report and finds that the State Board of Education is operating within its statutory authority. And the letter would be signed by the chairs on the committee's behalf.
That looks fine to me. Any questions, folks? Hillary, thank you very much for that. Appreciate you.
Senator Rafferty, just ask a quick question, but Hillary, by sending that letter, then we're done with this process, right?
That's correct. I do think it would be helpful, and it could just be a show of hands if the committee would vote in favor of moving forward with that letter, just for the record. Looks great. I assume the chairs are comfortable with me signing on your behalf for submission.
I am. And I have a hand raised from Representative Millett at this time, though. Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Did I miss the discussion of the GEA for the Department of Education? Okay, good. Thank you.
So with State Board of Education done, we would now move on to the Department of Education. I know that Chelsea Fortin Trumbull is here from the department, and I know Representative Millett, you did ask a question at last week, and I don't know if you want to dig into that a little bit before we get to the letter for the department.
Representative Millett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I had asked for some more information about the role of the Department of Education in regards to oh gosh, sorry, my brain just totally blanked. Juvenile correctional facilities. And Ms. Risler was kind enough to give me some information as to this kind of interesting relationship between the department and corrections. There definitely does seem to be oversight responsibilities that lie within the department. But I believe but welcome to inviting, if it's okay with you, Mr. Chair, Chelsea, to explain a little bit more.
Sure, she is here and available. Thank you very much for doing so.
Good afternoon. My name is Chelsea Fortin Trimble, and I'm with the Department of Education. The question that Representative Millette asks is a good one, and one that the Department of Education is preparing a report for this committee to answer. There is a portion in school approval that requires the department to answer a few additional questions around the supports that are being provided to students at the Arthur R. Gould School. And that report is being completed currently by Julie Smythe, the new director of the Office of Student and School and Student Supports, in coordination with the Department of Corrections. Are there any specific questions that I could? Oh, I see a hand. Thank you.
Oh, I saw a hand and it went down. Yes, Representative Millette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have a question. I just, I look forward to seeing that report. I think I would like to just memorialize in this letter that there is this relationship in the role that the department has, and that we encourage the department to, because there was no mention of it in their report. And so I think in future reports that really needs to be a part of it. I am not going to attempt to wordsmith when we have the master wordsmither as our committee analyst. I think she knows where I'm going. But I would just like to memorialize that that this was an area that wasn't, we'd like to have the department continue to show it attention or something like that. I don't want it to be heavy-handed, but I definitely want to have it noted.
Thank you. And I'm sure, as you said, our master will help us in that area. Anything else? Okay. That said, Hillary, she's probably answering. You're probably answering 15 emails and.
No, I was actually just making a note in my draft letter to the effect that Representative just mentioned, and something to the extent that perhaps if the committee requested additional information regarding this relationship between the department and the Department of Education and the Department of Corrections, and we could continue working with the department about this important issue or something to that effect. Sound about right? Okay.
All right. Anything else, folks?
The only other part of that letter, if I may, otherwise it reads pretty much identical to the State Board of Education, but I believe it was Representative Dodge had requested a little bit of language in the letter regards to commending the department's efforts over the past couple of years. And so what I came up with was basically that in addition, the committee commends the Department of Education for their extraordinary work over the last 2 years. Despite the challenges and disruptions brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic, Commissioner Macon and Department of Education staff have worked tirelessly to encourage and support students and educators throughout the state. Does that capture the intent? Is that too much? Is that too little? What would you like?
Anyone?
Perfect.
I think we're good as well. So, yes, Representative Dodge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Ritzler. That's wonderful, but I also wonder, is it excessive to perhaps include that Maine was cited in several national instances about their leadership, not just in the state, but throughout the country? I'm thinking particularly, I believe it was Moose that that garnered special national mention and recognition. If that is excessive, I understand, but I do also want to share my congratulations to the Department of Education. I just was so proud to hear those sorts of things. Thank you.
I think that would be up to the committee as a whole if everybody is comfortable with that. Given there is sort of a fair bit of extra language, what I'm thinking is I'll just draft this up and not necessarily bring it back in front of the full committee at a work session, but I can send it around to the full committee sort of as a language review and make sure everyone is okay with the language. And if they are, we can bring it back forward. But if not, I'll go ahead and submit it with the chair signature if that would work.
I think that will work.
So if nothing else, again, if we could just do a quick show of hands to vote to move forward with these letters as proposed today. Is there anyone in opposition? Then thank you. Then I will, but you will see this one for the Department of Education one last time before it goes out of committee.
Thank you for that. All right, any additional business, anyone? Eli?
No additional business other than I will take Representative Millet's vote on 1838 when we have completed all other tasks for the day.
Okay, I see Representative, all right, I'm sorry, Senator Woodson and Representative Brennan both have their hands up. Senator?
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Eli, I also did not vote. I evidently lost connection when you guys came back on 1845. I didn't vote.
So if you just stay on, Senator, don't leave the meeting when it concludes, and he can record that for you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Representative Brennan?
Just to say there'll be a brief corner caucus of Democrats as soon as we're done here.
Thank you. Again, Eli, Hillary, thank you for a great day. Hillary has a, I'm sorry, hand up. You're muted.
Yep, muted. I just want to give a quick update for the schedule for next week. I'll be working with Eli to try to get that out as soon as we can. Because Wednesday may be a little light and we didn't have anything scheduled for Thursday, Representative Brennan and I talked yesterday, and I emailed with the chairs and leads about trying to add a little bit of presentations for Wednesday and Thursday. Obviously, it'll probably take me a couple of days to confirm people's availability and put that all together. But I just wanted you to know that we're anticipating trying to have something a little bit more on Wednesday afternoon as well as possibly Thursday if we can, and I'll just let you know as soon as I can.
Thank you very much for that. Okay. All right, folks. Well, again, thank you for a good day. And so if you have to vote with Eli, you want to stay on. As Representative Brennan mentioned, a brief caucus following this for the Democratic caucus. Thank you. Folks, take care.
Thank you.
Survived the storm here. I don't know what the update is now.
Have a great weekend. Fun shoveling.
Representative Millet, on LD 1838, the votes in committee as such are 7 ought to pass as amended, 5 ought not to pass.
Thank you, Eli. And that amendment, it was what the sponsor had presented. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, I vote in favor of ought to pass as amended.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Senator Woodsum on LD 1845, the votes in committee as such are, I believe it's 11 ought to pass as amended.
Okay, now what was the amendment?
The amendments are, it's the one proposed by Hillary. There are a couple of changes that are going to be added. One is removing empathy, and the other is adding technology into the language. And that amendment will come from Hillary.
Okay, then I vote in favor.
Thank you.
Thank you.